Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that might send you into the deepest sleep of your life, the utterly brutal reality of surviving in ancient China. We're diving into what life was really like for ordinary people during the Han Dynasty, around the year 100 CE. Forget the elegant martial arts movies and serene tea ceremonies Hollywood sold you. Those were for the imperial court, the ancient equivalent of celebrities who got to practice philosophy while everyone else practiced not dying from dysentery. The truth is, if you were dropped into ancient China as a common farmer or craftsperson, you probably wouldn't survive your first day. You'd be dead faster than rumors spread through a village marketplace. And believe me, that's pretty fast when everyone's main entertainment is gossip and public executions. So before you get comfortable in your modern bed with its miracle of memory foam and climate control, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy these journeys through history's darker corners. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world as we explore the lives of people who never traveled beyond their county borders. Because getting lost in ancient China didn't just mean missing your exit, it meant becoming dinner for bandits or wild animals. Now dim the lights, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. A journey through mud, oppression, and the kind of survival that makes modern stress look like a gentle massage. We're heading to the Han Dynasty, where the average life expectancy was about 30 years if you were lucky, and most people weren't. You wake up before dawn, not because you set an alarm, because the rooster in your neighbor's yard has been shrieking for the past hour. Your bed isn't a bed. It's a raised platform made of packed earth, covered with straw mats. The straw is moldy. It smells like wet dog mixed with decay. Your pillow is a block of wood, covered with whatever fabric scraps your family could spare. The air in your one-room house is thick with smoke from the cooking fire that never fully dies. Your lungs burn with every breath. Everyone in your family coughs constantly. The baby hasn't stopped wheezing for weeks. You've all accepted that breathing clearly is something that happens to other people. Rich people. People who live in houses with actual windows. Your house has no windows. Light comes through gaps in the wooden walls. Rain comes through the same gaps. So does snow. And insects. And sometimes small animals looking for food. Your house is basically a wooden tent that termites are slowly eating. The termites might finish before you do. You share this space with 7 other people. Your parents, your wife, your 3 children, your brother and his wife. Privacy doesn't exist. Neither does personal space. Or quiet moments. Or individual meals for that matter. Everything is communal because there isn't enough of anything to go around. You stumble outside to relieve yourself. The latrine is a hole in the ground surrounded by 3 walls of rotting wood. There's no roof. Rain, snow, and bird droppings fall directly onto you while you handle your business. Toilet paper won't be invented for another 1,000 years. You use sticks, leaves when you can find them. Sometimes corn cobs if the harvest was good. The smell from the latrine mixes with smoke from cooking fires throughout the village. Add the stench of animals, unwashed bodies, and rotting food scraps. The air quality makes modern industrial pollution seem fresh and clean. You breathe this cocktail of horror every single day. Your nose stopped working properly years ago. You can taste the air. It tastes like death having a bad day. Water comes from the village well. The same well everyone uses to dump their wastewater. The same well animals drink from and occasionally die in. The water looks brown most days, green on special occasions. You drink it anyway because the alternative is dying of thirst, which happens faster than dying of whatever mysterious diseases live in that well. Your first meal of the day is millet porridge, just millet and water. No salt, sugar, or seasoning of any kind. Salt is expensive. Sugar doesn't exist yet. The porridge tastes like wet cardboard mixed with sadness. You eat it with a wooden spoon that's never been properly cleaned. Food poisoning is just another part of daily life. Like weather, but worse. Your wife, May, serves the porridge in wooden bowls that are cracked and stained. She moves slowly because she's pregnant with your fourth child. She's 22 years old and looks 40. Childbirth in ancient China kills about 1 in 10 women. Your first wife died giving birth to your second child. May knows the statistics. Everyone does. But women don't get to choose whether or not to have children. Men make those decisions, along with every other decision. The baby kept everyone awake again. May says, ladling porridge into your bowl. Her voice is flat, exhausted. The baby is your youngest, barely 6 months old. He cries constantly because he's always hungry. May doesn't produce enough milk because she doesn't eat enough food. There isn't enough food. There's never enough food. Your brother, Liu, sits across from you, eating his portion. He's thin to the point of being skeletal. Everyone is thin. Being fat is a sign of wealth and success. Being fat means you have access to more food than you need. Nobody in your village has ever had that problem. Liu works as a laborer when work is available. Most days, it isn't. Old Chen died yesterday, Liu says between spoonfuls of porridge. Old Chen was 35. Not actually old by modern standards, but ancient by Han Dynasty standards. His cough finally got him. You nod. People die constantly in your village. From coughs, fevers, infections, accidents, starvation, exposure, and dozens of other things that modern medicine treats with over-the-counter medications. Death is so common that grieving periods are brief. There isn't time for extended mourning when survival requires constant attention. Your 3 children eat silently. The oldest, your son Ping, is 7 years old. He's already working. Children start contributing to family survival as soon as they can walk and follow instructions. Childhood as we know it doesn't exist. Children are small adults with fewer skills and more needs. They're economic assets if they survive, liabilities if they don't. Your daughter Lin is 5. She helps her mother with cooking, cleaning, and caring for the baby. Your youngest son Bao is 3. He mostly stays out of the way and tries not to break anything important. All 3 children are underweight, malnourished, and developmentally delayed compared to modern children. But they're alive, which makes them success stories in ancient China. After breakfast, you walk to the fields. The sun is rising, painting the sky colors that would be beautiful if you had time to appreciate beauty. But beauty doesn't plant rice or repair irrigation channels. Beauty doesn't keep your family fed. You save aesthetic appreciation for people with full stomachs and secure housing. That's not you. The fields belong to the local magistrate. You're a tenant farmer, which means you grow crops on someone else's land and give them most of what you produce. It's not quite slavery, but it's not exactly freedom either. It's something in between that keeps you alive just long enough to be useful. The magistrate lives in the county seat, in a house with actual windows and multiple rooms. He's never worked in these fields. He's never worked in any fields. He inherited his position from his father, who inherited it from his father. The magistrate's representative, Master Wang, oversees the tenant farmers. He's a thin man with a permanent scowl and hands that have never touched farm tools. He wears robes made of silk, while you wear clothes made of hemp and hope. His job is to make sure you produce enough crops to keep the magistrate happy. Your happiness isn't part of the equation. You're late, Master Wang says as you approach the field. You're not late. The sun barely finished rising, but Master Wang needs to establish dominance every day. It's part of his routine, like breathing or collecting taxes. The porridge took longer to cook, you explain. Explanations are dangerous. They can be interpreted as excuses or, worse, backtalk. But silence can be interpreted as disrespect. There's no safe response to authority in ancient China. Authority always wins. Your family's problems are not my concern, Master Wang replies. The magistrate expects results, not excuses. You nod and walk to your assigned section of the field. The rice paddies are flooded with water from the irrigation system. The water is knee-deep and murky. It's also home to leeches, parasites, and bacteria that cause infections in any open wounds. You have several open wounds from previous days of work. fresh cuts on your hands and arms from sharp rice stalks, infected bites from insects, sores from poorly fitting tools. You wade into the water and begin transplanting rice seedlings. The work is backbreaking, literally. You spend 12 hours a day bent over at a 90-degree angle, planting tiny green shoots in precise rows. Your spine screams in protest, your muscles cramp, your hands bleed from handling rough stalks. But you continue because stopping means punishment. Punishment means less food for your family. Less food means death. The water in the paddy is warm and still. Perfect breeding conditions for mosquitoes. They swarm around you in clouds so thick you inhale them with every breath. Mosquito bites cover every exposed inch of your skin. Some of the bites become infected. Some carry diseases. Malaria kills thousands of people every year in your region. So does dengue fever. You've watched neighbors die from mysterious illnesses that modern medicine would identify and treat easily. Other farmers work nearby. There's no conversation during work hours. Master Wang patrols the fields, looking for signs of laziness or inefficiency. Talking is considered laziness. Resting is considered rebellion. Standing up straight to stretch your back is considered time theft. The only sounds are splashing water, rustling rice stalks, and the occasional grunt of pain from workers whose bodies are failing under the strain. Your neighbor, old Zhang, works the section next to yours. He's 42 years old, which makes him practically ancient by local standards. His hands are permanently curved into claws from decades of farm work. His back is bent at an angle that would require surgery in the modern world. He moves like someone in constant pain, because he is. My grandson started coughing blood yesterday, Zhang whispers during a moment when Master Wang is distracted. Child mortality rates in ancient China hover around 50%. Half of all children die before reaching adulthood. Families plan for this reality. Parents have many children hoping a few will survive. Love for children is tempered by the practical knowledge that attachment to someone who might die creates additional suffering. Has he seen the medicine man? You whisper back. The village medicine man practices traditional Chinese medicine, which consists mostly of herbs, superstition, and hope. Sometimes it works. Often it doesn't. But it's the only medical care available to people like you. Rich people have access to educated physicians who have studied anatomy and disease. Poor people have access to whoever claims to know about healing. Can't afford it, Zhang replies. Medical care costs money. Money requires having something valuable to trade. Most farmers have nothing valuable except their labor, and their labor belongs to the magistrate. It's a system designed to keep poor people poor and sick people dead. You work until midday, when Master Wang allows a brief break for the noon meal. You sit in whatever shade you can find and eat cold millet porridge from a wooden bowl. The same breakfast porridge, now congealed and even less appetizing. You drink warm water from a shared gourd that tastes like dirt and desperation. This is lunch in ancient China. Fine dining means the porridge isn't moldy. A group of imperial soldiers passes through the village during your break. They're traveling from the capital to some distant province where people are causing trouble. Rebellion is common in ancient China because life is unbearable for most people. The soldiers wear leather armor and carry iron weapons. They look well-fed and confident. They represent the imperial government, which means they represent power you'll never have. The soldiers stop to water their horses at the village, the same well you drink from, the same well animals defecate in. The horses are better cared for than most humans in your village. They eat grain while you eat porridge. They receive medical attention when injured while you suffer through pain and infection. The empire values horses more than peasants, because horses are harder to replace. One of the soldiers, a young man with a sparse beard and arrogant eyes, notices the village women watching from doorways. Women in ancient China are expected to avoid looking directly at strange men. But curiosity is human nature. The women peek out to see representatives of the wider world they'll never be allowed to explore. You, the soldier calls to your wife, who is standing near your house with the baby. Bring water for our horses. May approaches slowly, carrying a wooden bucket. She keeps her eyes down and moves carefully. Interaction with imperial soldiers is dangerous. They have absolute authority over civilians. They can demand food, shelter, or services without payment. They can punish perceived disrespect with violence. They represent the emperor, which means they represent divine authority. "You're pretty for a farm woman," the soldier says, looking May up and down like livestock being evaluated for purchase. Your stomach clenches with fear and anger. Fear because soldiers can take whatever they want. Anger because your wife is being treated like property. But anger is useless. Expressing anger would result in severe punishment for your entire family. May pours water into the horse trough without responding. She's learned to make herself invisible during interactions with powerful men. Invisibility is a survival skill for women in ancient China. Drawing attention leads to unwanted consequences. Unwanted consequences can destroy families. "Perhaps we'll stay in your village tonight," the soldier continues. "The magistrate's house might be too crowded for all of us." This is a threat disguised as casual conversation. Soldiers have the right to commandeer civilian housing. They can force families to provide food and shelter without compensation. They can appropriate whatever resources they need for imperial business. Your house, your food, and your wife's safety are all subject to military authority. Master Wang approaches the soldiers and bows deeply. He recognizes the danger of having armed representatives of imperial power in his village. Soldiers answer only to their commanders and the emperor. Local magistrates have limited influence over military operations. Master Wang's authority over tenant farmers means nothing to imperial troops. "Honored soldiers," Master Wang says, his voice carefully respectful. "The magistrate's house has been prepared for distinguished guests. Fresh bedding, hot meals, and comfortable quarters await you." The soldier with the beard considers this offer. He's enjoying the fear his presence creates. Power over civilians is one of the perks of military service. Intimidating peasants who can't fight back provides entertainment during long marches between actual battles. "We'll consider it," the soldier finally replies, "after we finish watering our horses and examining the local resources." You continue eating your cold porridge while watching this interaction. Your hands shake slightly from suppressed fear and rage. Your wife and children are at the mercy of armed strangers who view them as objects for potential exploitation. But there's nothing you can do. Fighting back would result in execution. Running would result in pursuit and punishment for your entire village. Your only option is to remain invisible and hope the soldiers lose interest. The break ends, and you return to the rice paddies. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly. There's no shade in the flooded fields. The water reflects sunlight directly into your eyes, causing temporary blindness and permanent headaches. Your skin burns and blisters. Sunscreen won't be invented for another 1,000 years. Sun protection consists of wearing long sleeves and hoping for clouds. The combination of heat, standing water, and physical labor creates perfect conditions for dehydration and heat exhaustion. Several farmers collapse during hot afternoons. Some recover, others don't. Master Wang views collapsed workers as inconveniences rather than medical emergencies. Productivity matters more than individual welfare. As the day progresses, your back pain intensifies. Your hands cramp around the rice stalks. Your legs shake from standing in water for hours. Your head pounds from dehydration and sun exposure. This is day one of thousands of identical days you'll experience if you survive long enough. Every day from now until you die will involve the same back-breaking labor, the same pain, and the same exhaustion. By late afternoon, storm clouds gather on the horizon. Rain during planting season can be helpful or devastating, depending on timing and intensity. Too little rain means drought and crop failure. Too much rain means flooding and crop failure. The perfect amount of rain happens rarely and unpredictably. Weather forecasting consists of looking at clouds and making educated guesses. The first drops of rain begin falling as you transplant the last row of seedlings. Rain makes the work more difficult because wet hands slip on rice stalks. Muddy ground becomes treacherous. Visibility decreases. but work continues until Master Wang decides you can stop. Master Wang makes this decision based on productivity calculations, not worker safety. "Finish your sections," Master Wang shouts over the increasing wind. Rain is no excuse for incomplete work. You hurry to finish planting your assigned area. The rain increases from drops to steady downpour. Your clothes become soaked within minutes. Wet hemp fabric clings to your body and chafes your skin. Your straw hat disintegrates in the rain, leaving your head unprotected. Water runs down your face and into your eyes, making it difficult to see the seedlings you're planting. Other farmers struggle with the same conditions. Old Zhang slips in the mud and falls face first into the paddy water. He comes up coughing and spitting, his face covered in mud and organic matter you don't want to identify. He's probably inhaled parasites, bacteria, and agricultural runoff. But he continues working because stopping isn't an option. Lightning flashes in the distance, followed by thunder. Working in flooded fields during thunderstorms is extremely dangerous. Water conducts electricity. Metal tools attract lightning. But Master Wang hasn't called an end to the workday, so everyone continues planting rice seedlings while nature throws increasingly violent tantrums overhead. The rain becomes torrential. Visibility drops to a few feet. You can barely see the other farmers working nearby. The rice paddies begin overflowing their boundaries, turning the entire field into a shallow lake. Standing water rises from knee-deep to thigh-deep. Your movements become slower and more difficult. Every step requires fighting against water resistance. Finally, Master Wang signals the end of the workday. You trudge through flooded fields toward the village, your body exhausted and your clothes thoroughly soaked. Your feet squish inside waterlogged sandals made of woven grass. Water pours from your hat and clothes, creating small streams as you walk. You look like someone who nearly drowned, which isn't far from the truth. The village is in chaos. Rainwater flows through the streets like small rivers. Houses without proper foundations are beginning to flood. Animals huddle under whatever shelter they can find. Children and elderly people have been moved to higher ground, which in this flat landscape means the slight elevation of burial mounds. Your ancestors are literally keeping your family above water. Your house has 3 inches of standing water on the floor. Everything made of fabric is soaked. Everything made of wood is swelling and warping. Your sleeping mats are saturated with muddy water. Your cooking supplies are contaminated. The small amount of stored grain you've managed to save is ruined. Months of careful rationing and planning destroyed in one afternoon. May stands in the doorway holding the baby, both of them shivering from cold and fear. Your other children huddle together on the raised sleeping platform, the only dry surface remaining in the house. They look at you with wide eyes, waiting for adult reassurance that everything will be okay. But everything is not okay. Everything is getting worse rapidly. The roof is leaking, May reports unnecessarily. You can see water dripping through gaps in the wooden shingles. The grain stores are flooded. Most of our winter supplies are ruined. Winter supplies. The small amount of grain and dried vegetables your family has managed to set aside for the lean months when no crops grow. Without these supplies, you'll face starvation before spring planting season. Thousands of families in your region are facing the same crisis. One storm has created a famine that will kill more people than any war. You stand in your flooded house, water up to your ankles, watching your family's survival prospects wash away with the rain. There's no insurance for peasant farmers, no government assistance programs, no emergency relief funds. When disaster strikes, you survive with whatever resources you have, or you don't survive at all. We'll rebuild, you tell May, trying to sound more confident than you feel. We'll plant kitchen gardens. We'll find ways to earn extra food. But you both know the reality. Kitchen gardens require seeds you don't have. Extra work requires jobs that don't exist. Your survival depends on factors beyond your control. Weather, disease, imperial policies, and the whims of local authorities. You're living one disaster away from death, and disasters are common in ancient China. The rain continues through the night. You lie on wet sleeping mats, listening to water drip through the roof and splash into puddles around your house. The baby cries from hunger and discomfort. Your children shiver from cold and dampness. May coughs constantly, a sound that indicates developing respiratory infection. You're all going to get sick from exposure to cold, wet conditions. Some of you might not recover. Sleep comes in short intervals between thunder, roof leaks, and baby crying. You drift in and out of consciousness, your body exhausted but your mind racing with worry about tomorrow's problems. How to dry grain that's already moldy. How to repair roof damage without materials or money. How to feed your family when most of your food is ruined. These problems have no easy solutions. Most have no solutions at all. Dawn arrives grey and overcast. The rain has stopped, but water continues dripping from saturated thatch roofs throughout the village. Puddles reflect the cloudy sky like broken mirrors scattered across the muddy ground. The air smells like wet earth, rotting vegetation, and human misery concentrated into breathable form. You wake up feeling worse than when you went to sleep. Your muscles ache from yesterday's work and sleeping on wet surfaces. Your throat is raw from breathing damp air all night. Your skin itches from wearing wet clothes for 12 hours. This is what recovery looks like in ancient China, waking up in worse condition than you were in the day before. The baby has developed a fever during the night. His skin is hot and flushed. He won't eat and barely responds to stimulation. Infant fevers in ancient China are often fatal. There are no thermometers to monitor temperature, no antibiotics to fight infection, no hospitals to provide intensive care. You treat sick babies with herbal remedies and prayer, then hope for the best while preparing for the worst. May holds the baby against her chest, trying to cool his fever with her body temperature. She hums quietly, a lullaby her mother taught her before dying of childbed fever 6 years ago. The lullaby is about butterflies and flowers, beautiful things that exist in a world very different from the one you inhabit. Beauty feels like mockery when your child might be dying. He needs the medicine man, May says quietly. You both know this. You also both know you can't afford the medicine man's services. Medical care requires payment in grain, silver, or labor. Your grain is ruined. You have no silver. Your labor belongs to the magistrate. There's nothing left to trade for your son's life. Old Zhang appears at your door, looking haggard and desperate. His house has suffered more damage than yours. His roof collapsed during the storm, destroying everything inside. His pregnant daughter-in-law was injured by falling debris. His grandson, the one who was coughing blood, is now coughing up pieces of lung tissue. Zhang's family is facing multiple medical emergencies, with no resources to address any of them. The medicine man wants 2 silver coins to look at my grandson, Zhang says. His voice carries the hollow tone of someone who has accepted defeat. I don't have 2 silver coins. I don't have 2 copper coins. I have nothing. 2 silver coins represent about 6 months of a tenant farmer's earnings after taxes and rent. It's more money than most people in your village see in a year. The medicine man knows this. He sets his prices high enough to exclude poor patients, while maintaining plausible deniability about discriminating against the desperate. It's not his fault poor people can't afford medical care. It's their fault for being poor. Maybe if several families contribute, you suggest, knowing it's hopeless. Every family in the village is facing the same post-storm financial crisis. Nobody has surplus resources to share. Community cooperation requires having something to cooperate with. When everyone has nothing, cooperation becomes impossible. I already asked, Zhang replies. Everyone's situation is the same. We're all one emergency away from complete disaster. Yesterday's storm was everyone's emergency. You walk outside to assess the damage to your property. The small kitchen garden behind your house has been washed away completely. Months of careful cultivation destroyed in one night. The chicken coop has collapsed, killing 3 of your 4 chickens. The surviving chicken stands in the wreckage, looking confused and bedraggled. She probably won't lay eggs for weeks after the trauma of nearly drowning. Your farming tools, stored in a lean-to shed, are scattered across the village. Metal implements have been swept away by floodwaters and are probably lost forever. Wooden handles have swollen and cracked. Rope bindings have rotted. Replacing these tools will require resources you don't have. Working without proper tools will make an already difficult job nearly impossible. The village well, your only source of drinking water, is now contaminated with runoff from flooded latrines, animal pens, and rotting vegetation. The water is brown and smells like sewage. Drinking it will cause illness. Not drinking it will cause death. You choose the option that kills you more slowly and drink the contaminated water while trying not to think about what you're ingesting. Master Wang arrives to inspect the storm damage. He wears a raincoat made of oiled fabric and rides a horse instead of walking through the mud. His priority is assessing crop damage and calculating how the storm will affect tribute payments to the magistrate. Human suffering interests him only insofar as it impacts agricultural productivity. Half the rice seedlings are dead, Master Wang announces after surveying the flooded fields. We'll need to replant immediately if we want any harvest this season. Replanting requires new seedlings, which cost money. Money comes from previous harvests, which are now rotting in flooded granaries. It's a cycle of dependency designed to keep tenant farmers perpetually indebted to landowners. You borrow resources for planting, work all season to grow crops, give most of your harvest to the landowner as rent, and have barely enough left to survive until the next planting season. Any disruption to this cycle creates insurmountable debt. Where will we get seedlings, you ask, already knowing the answer will involve further impoverishment. The magistrate will provide seedlings at the standard rate, Master Wang replies, plus interest for the inconvenience of advancing resources before harvest. The standard rate is approximately twice what seedlings cost in the market. Interest adds another 50% to the total cost. By the time you finish paying for replacement seedlings, you'll owe the magistrate more than your annual harvest is worth. You'll be working to pay debt rather than earning money for survival. Debt slavery is legal in ancient China and commonly practiced. You spend the morning helping other farmers assess storm damage. Every house in the village has suffered significant destruction. Roofs have collapsed or are leaking badly. Walls have been weakened by flooding and may collapse without major repairs. Food stores have been contaminated or washed away entirely. The village blacksmith's forge has been flooded, destroying his tools and making metalwork impossible until everything dries and can be rebuilt. The village carpenter, Master Li, examines the structural damage to various buildings. He's a skilled craftsman who learned his trade from his father and grandfather. But even skilled craftsmen can't create materials from nothing. Repairing the village will require lumber, nails, rope, and other supplies that must be purchased from traveling merchants. Nobody has money to buy construction materials. We could repair 1 or 2 houses if everyone contributes labor, Master Li suggests. But we don't have materials for widespread reconstruction. This creates an impossible choice: help a few families while leaving others homeless, or help nobody while everyone suffers equally. Ancient China operates on survival mathematics that force communities to choose between various forms of misery. There are no good options, only different degrees of catastrophe. The village elder, a 70-year-old man named Master Chen, calls a meeting to discuss collective response to the storm damage. Master Chen has survived famines, wars, floods, droughts, and epidemics. His experience with disaster management comes from living through disasters repeatedly, not from any formal training in emergency response. He's earned respect through longevity rather than education. We've survived worse storms, Master Chen tells the assembled villagers. During the Great Flood 15 years ago, we lost everything twice. But we rebuilt. We survived. We're still here. Survival stories from previous disasters provide psychological comfort, but no practical solutions to current problems. Knowing that people have survived similar catastrophes doesn't give you the resources needed to survive your own catastrophe. It just confirms that survival is possible under circumstances that seem impossible. Whether you personally will survive depends on factors beyond your control. The village families begin organizing mutual aid efforts. Families with less damage will temporarily house families whose homes are uninhabitable. Remaining food supplies will be pooled and distributed according to family size and need. Work crews will focus on repairing the most critical damage first: roofs, wells, and food storage facilities. It's systematic triage applied to community-wide disaster relief. Your family joins the cooperative effort because you have no choice. Individual survival is impossible when disasters affect entire communities. But cooperative survival requires trusting other people to honor their commitments when resources are scarce and desperation is high. History shows that cooperation works until it doesn't. When cooperation fails, it fails catastrophically. You spend 3 days working on community repair projects. Your own house remains flooded and damaged, while you help repair the village well and the grain storage building. The work is exhausting and frustrating. You're using energy you don't have to fix problems you didn't create, while your own family's needs go unaddressed. But community survival supersedes individual convenience. Everyone suffers equally so that everyone can survive together. The village well requires complete reconstruction. The wooden frame has rotted and collapsed. The stone lining has shifted and cracked. Contaminated water needs to be pumped out and replaced with clean water from a distant spring. This project will take weeks of coordinated labor and significant material resources. Meanwhile, everyone drinks contaminated water and hopes for the best. Master Wang returns with news from the county seat. The magistrate has received reports of storm damage throughout the region. Tax collection will be postponed for 1 month to allow farmers time to assess crop losses. This sounds like good news until Master Wang explains that postponed taxes accumulate interest. The magistrate is giving you time to become more deeply indebted to the imperial government. The magistrate also wants a complete inventory of storm damage. Master Wang continues. Every family must report losses of grain, tools, livestock, and housing. The information will be used to calculate adjusted tax obligations. Tax adjustments in ancient China typically work against taxpayers. If your losses reduce your ability to pay taxes, the government calculates how much additional labor you must provide to compensate for reduced monetary payments. If your losses don't significantly impact your tax burden, you pay full taxes regardless of your decreased ability to pay. The system is designed to extract maximum revenue from citizens regardless of their circumstances. You begin the tedious process of cataloguing your family's losses. 3 chickens dead, 4 farming tools lost to flooding, approximately 30 pounds of grain ruined by water damage, 1 cooking pot cracked from thermal shock, half of your winter clothing damaged beyond repair. When you add up the monetary value of these losses, the total exceeds your annual income. You're financially ruined, and tax season hasn't even started yet. While you're completing paperwork for the magistrate, May approaches with devastating news. The baby's fever has worsened. He's now having difficulty breathing and won't eat at all. His skin has turned pale grey, a colour that indicates organ failure. Without immediate medical intervention, he will die within hours. With medical intervention, he might survive another few days. The medicine man still wants 2 silver coins for a consultation. Maybe we could sell something, May suggests desperately, or borrow money from someone. You own nothing valuable enough to sell for 2 silver coins. Your farming tools are destroyed. Your clothes are rags. Your house is a waterlogged shack on land you don't own. Your livestock consists of 1 traumatized chicken. There's nothing to sell and nobody to borrow from. Your baby is dying because you're poor, and you're poor because the economic system is designed to keep peasants poor. Old Zhang arrives with his own tragic update. His grandson died during the night. The boy who was coughing blood finally coughed up enough blood to die from internal hemorrhaging. Zhang spent his final hours holding the child and listening to him struggle for breath. The boy was 8 years old. He'll be buried in an unmarked grave next to dozens of other children who died from preventable diseases. At least his suffering is over, Zhang says, trying to find comfort in his grandson's death. This is what hope looks like in ancient China, being grateful when someone you love dies because their life had become unbearable. When existence is primarily suffering, death represents relief rather than tragedy. You sit in your flooded house, holding your dying baby, while listening to your neighbor describe his dead grandson. This is parenthood in ancient China. You bring children into a world that kills them systematically and randomly. You love them intensely, while knowing they probably won't survive to adulthood. You invest emotional energy in relationships that disaster, disease, and economic exploitation will likely destroy. The baby struggles to breathe while you rock him gently. His tiny chest rises and falls irregularly. His eyes are unfocused and glassy. He makes small sounds that might be attempts at crying or simply the noise of organs shutting down. You've seen enough people die to recognize the signs. Your son is in the final stages of whatever illness is killing him. May sits beside you, tears streaming down her face. She's crying for the baby, for the other children she's lost, for the harsh reality of motherhood in a world that treats children as expendable resources. She's also crying from exhaustion, hunger, fear, and the accumulated grief of watching people suffer and die constantly. Crying is one of the few expressions of emotion that authorities allow peasants to display publicly. Your other children watch from the corner of the room. They understand that their baby brother is dying. They've seen death before. Everyone in ancient China sees death regularly. Children learn early that life is fragile and often ends suddenly. They develop emotional defenses against loss that would seem pathological in modern contexts but represent necessary psychological adaptations to frequent trauma. The baby takes his final breath just as the sun sets. There's no dramatic moment, no last words, no peaceful transition. He simply stops breathing while you're holding him. One moment he's struggling to live, the next moment he's not. Death in ancient China is usually this anticlimactic. People don't die like they do in movies. They just stop existing. You sit in silence for several minutes, holding your dead son. May reaches over and closes his eyes, a gesture that feels both tender and practical. Dead babies need to be buried quickly in hot climates. There's no time for extended viewing or elaborate funeral preparations. Death requires immediate action to prevent additional health hazards for the living. We need to tell the others, you finally say. Your voice sounds strange, like it's coming from someone else. Grief in ancient China is a luxury you can't afford for very long. Other children need care. Work continues tomorrow. Life moves forward regardless of individual losses. You'll mourn your son while performing all the same survival tasks that occupied your time when he was alive. Your oldest son, Ping, approaches slowly. He's 7 years old and has now watched his baby brother die. This experience will shape his understanding of mortality, family bonds, and the precarious nature of existence. He'll carry this trauma for the rest of his life, however long that turns out to be. Childhood innocence is another luxury that ancient China doesn't provide. Will the baby go to heaven? Ping asks. Religious concepts in ancient China are complex and vary between Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian traditions. Most peasants blend elements from different belief systems into personalized spiritual frameworks that help them cope with constant suffering. The afterlife represents hope for eventual justice and peace that doesn't exist in the physical world. Yes, you tell Ping, because the alternative explanations are too harsh for a 7-year-old to process. He'll be with your grandparents and the other babies who died too young. This is probably a lie. You're not sure what happens after death. Nobody is. But living people need stories that make unbearable realities slightly more bearable. Religion serves this function effectively. Whether religious stories are true matters less than whether they help people continue functioning in impossible circumstances. You wrap the baby's body in a piece of cloth that was once part of a blanket. The fabric is stained and threadbare, but it's the best burial shroud your family can provide. Rich people bury their dead in silk robes with jade ornaments. Poor people bury their dead in whatever fabric scraps are available. Death doesn't eliminate class distinctions. It just makes them more obvious. The village has a small cemetery on a hill overlooking the fields. Most graves are unmarked mounds of earth that will be forgotten within a generation. Only wealthy families can afford stone markers or elaborate monuments. Your baby will be buried in an anonymous grave that rain and time will gradually erase. Future generations will have no record of his brief existence. You carry the tiny body to the cemetery while May and the children follow behind. Other village families are also burying storm victims. Old Zhang carries his grandson's body wrapped in hemp cloth. The carpenter's elderly mother died from exposure after her house collapsed. Master Chen's neighbor lost twin infants to fever. Death is having a busy week in your village. The village doesn't have a formal priest or burial ceremony. Master Chen says a few words about the cycle of life and death, the importance of honoring ancestors, and the hope that the deceased will find peace in whatever realm awaits them. His speech is brief and practical. Extended religious ceremonies require resources the village doesn't have. Grief is a private matter that shouldn't interfere with community productivity. You dig a small grave using a wooden shovel with a cracked handle. The ground is still waterlogged from the storm, making digging difficult. Muddy soil sticks to the shovel and your hands. Water seeps into the hole as fast as you can dig it out. You're essentially creating a small pond rather than a proper grave. But this is the best burial your son will receive. Poor people don't get to choose their final resting conditions. After placing the baby's body in the waterlogged grave, you cover it with wet earth and small stones. The burial mound is barely visible among similar mounds scattered across the hillside. You say a quiet prayer asking whatever gods might be listening to care for your son's spirit. Then you walk back to your flooded house to continue the business of staying alive. The next morning brings new challenges that demand your attention regardless of personal grief. Master Wang arrives with replacement rice seedlings and a contract detailing the terms of your increased debt obligation. The seedlings cost 3 times their normal market value. Interest on the debt compounds monthly. You'll be working to pay this debt for the next 5 years, assuming you survive that long. The magistrate has been generous in providing emergency agricultural support, Master Wang explains while you examine the contract you can't read. Literacy among peasants is virtually non-existent. Legal documents are written in classical Chinese that even educated people find difficult to understand. You're signing a contract that could authorize anything from debt slavery to organ harvesting, and you have no way of knowing what you're agreeing to. You mark the contract with your thumbprint pressed into red ink. This thumbprint represents your legal consent to terms you can't read, negotiated by people who don't represent your interests, enforced by courts you can't access. Justice in ancient China operates on behalf of those who can afford legal representation. Poor people receive whatever justice rich people decide to provide, usually none. The new seedlings need to be planted immediately to have any chance of producing a harvest before winter. You wade back into the flooded rice paddies, your body still weak from grief and poor nutrition. The work feels meaningless now. You're planting crops that will be confiscated to pay debts that were imposed after a natural disaster destroyed your previous crops. It's agricultural treadmill that leads nowhere except deeper poverty. Other farmers work alongside you, in sullen silence. Everyone understands that they're participating in a system designed to exploit their labor while keeping them perpetually indebted. But understanding exploitation doesn't provide alternatives to exploitation. Refusing to plant crops means guaranteed starvation. Planting crops means probable starvation with a small chance of survival. Most people choose the option with any chance at all. Old Zhang works more slowly than usual. Grief has aged him visibly. His movements are deliberate and careful, like someone who's forgotten how to coordinate basic motor functions. Loss affects everyone differently, but it affects everyone. You're all processing trauma while performing physically demanding labor under dangerous conditions. Mental health support doesn't exist in ancient China. You cope with psychological damage using whatever internal resources you can muster. My wife wants to have another baby, Zhang says quietly while transplanting seedlings, to replace the grandson we lost. Replacement children are common in ancient China. High infant mortality rates encourage families to continue reproducing until they achieve desired family sizes. But replacement children don't actually replace lost children. They just add new risks and responsibilities to families already struggling with survival. Having more children increases the statistical probability that some will survive to adulthood. It also increases the probability that some will die tragically. Children are blessings, you reply, because this is what people say when discussing reproductive decisions. But children in ancient China are complicated blessings that come with enormous costs and uncertain benefits. Every new child represents another mouth to feed, another person to house, another potential source of heartbreak when disease or accident claims young lives. People have children anyway because hope is stronger than logic. By midday, news arrives that fundamentally changes your understanding of your situation. A messenger from the county seat brings word that rebellion has broken out in the neighboring province. Imperial troops are being mobilized to suppress the uprising. All able-bodied men between the ages of 18 and 40 are subject to military conscription for the duration of the emergency. Military conscription in ancient China is essentially a death sentence disguised as patriotic duty. Conscripted soldiers receive minimal training, inadequate equipment, and orders to march toward enemy forces that are better armed and more experienced. Most conscripts die within their first battle. Those who survive combat often die from disease, starvation, or exposure during long military campaigns. Families rarely see conscripted relatives again. You're 32 years old, which places you squarely within the conscription age range. You're also the primary income earner for your family. Your military service would mean economic disaster for Mei and the children, even if you somehow survive the rebellion. But refusing conscription means immediate execution for desertion. Imperial authorities don't negotiate with peasants about military obligations. All eligible men report to the village center at dawn tomorrow. The messenger announces, "Bring whatever weapons and supplies you can carry. The rebellion must be crushed quickly to preserve imperial stability." Imperial stability. This phrase appears in all government communications about military action. The empire's stability matters more than individual lives, family welfare, or local economic conditions. Peasants exist to serve imperial interests. When imperial interests require peasant deaths, peasants die. Personal preferences about military service are irrelevant. You walk home slowly, trying to process the implications of probable conscription. Tomorrow morning, you'll report for military duty that will almost certainly kill you. Tonight might be your last evening with your family. These could be your final hours as a living person. Most people don't know when they're going to die. You have approximately 18 hours to prepare for probable death. Mei understands the situation without detailed explanation. She's lived in ancient China long enough to know what military conscription means for peasant families. Her husband will march away with other village men. Some of them might return. Most of them won't. She'll become a widow responsible for supporting 3 children in an economic system that provides no opportunities for single women to earn sustainable incomes. Maybe the rebellion will end quickly, Mei suggests without conviction. Maybe they won't need very many soldiers. Military campaigns in ancient China typically last months or years. Rebellions don't end quickly because the conditions that cause rebellions take time to address through violence. Imperial forces use overwhelming brutality to discourage future uprisings. This requires extended military operations that consume enormous numbers of soldiers. Quick resolutions happen only in government propaganda. You spend your final evening at home helping your children understand what's going to happen. This conversation requires explaining concepts like war, death, and government authority to people who are 3, 5, and 7 years old. Children in ancient China learn about violence and mortality earlier than modern children. But they're still children. They need reassurance and stability that you can't provide. Daddy has to go help the emperor. You explain, simplifying geopolitical conflict into terms a young child might understand. I'll be gone for a while, but I want you to help Mommy take care of everything here. Your 7-year-old son, Ping, nods solemnly. He's already taking on adult responsibilities and will assume even more after you leave. Child labor is normal in ancient China, but losing the primary wage earner means children must work harder to compensate for decreased family income. Ping will go from helping with chores to performing essential survival tasks. His childhood ends tomorrow morning. Lynn, your 5-year-old daughter, asks when you'll come home. This question has no honest answer. You might die in battle next week. You might survive the campaign and return in 2 years. You might be transferred to permanent military service and never return at all. Military conscription creates open-ended separations that could last forever. I'll come home as soon as I can, you tell her. While I'm gone, you need to be brave and help take care of baby Bao. Bao is 3 years old and doesn't understand the conversation. He plays with wooden toys while the adults discuss his father's impending departure for military service. His innocence will end gradually as he realizes that his father isn't coming back, and his family's survival depends increasingly on his contributions to household labor. 3-year-olds in ancient China grow up quickly when circumstances demand maturity. That night, you and May lie awake, discussing practical arrangements for your family's survival during your absence. She'll need to find work that can be performed while caring for 3 young children. Options include spinning thread, weaving cloth, preparing food for sale, or taking in laundry from wealthier families. All of these jobs pay poorly and require long hours of tedious labor. None provide enough income to support a family of 4. Maybe I could work in the magistrate's household, May suggests. Servant positions include meals and housing. Domestic service for wealthy families offers stable employment, but often requires living arrangements that separate women from their children. Servants work 16-hour days preparing meals, cleaning houses, and attending to personal needs of their employers. They receive food and shelter, but little monetary compensation. Most importantly, they lose control over their schedules and personal freedom. Domestic service is a form of voluntary slavery that poor women choose when other options don't exist. We'll find a way to manage, you tell May, though neither of you believes this. Managing requires resources you don't have and opportunities that don't exist. Your family's survival will depend on factors beyond anyone's control: weather, disease, imperial policies, and local economic conditions. But expressing confidence provides psychological comfort even when confidence isn't justified by circumstances. Dawn arrives too soon. You wake before sunrise and dress in your best clothes, which consist of hemp pants and a cotton shirt that have been patched multiple times. You pack a small bundle containing a change of clothes, a wooden bowl, and a cloth bag for carrying grain rations. This represents the sum total of your military equipment. Imperial forces provide weapons and armor to soldiers who survive long enough to prove their usefulness. New recruits make do with whatever they can carry from home. Other men from the village gather in the central square, all carrying similar bundles and wearing similar expressions of resigned dread. Master Li the carpenter, old Zhang, your neighbor Wang, and 15 other men between the ages of 18 and 40. The village is losing most of its adult male population in a single morning. Women, children, and elderly men will be responsible for maintaining agricultural production and community infrastructure. Master Wang reads the official conscription order in formal language that most people don't understand. The document explains that military service is a privilege and honor that demonstrates loyalty to the emperor. Failure to report for duty constitutes treason punishable by execution. Desertion during military campaigns results in execution of the deserter's entire family. The imperial government doesn't make idle threats about military discipline. A sergeant from the imperial army arrives to collect the new recruits. He's a professional soldier with scars on his face and hands that tell stories of previous battles. His equipment is well maintained, and his bearing suggests competence and experience. He looks at the village conscripts with the expression of someone evaluating livestock for slaughter. Most of these farmers will be dead within a month. You're soldiers now, the sergeant announces. Soldiers follow orders without question. Soldiers fight without hesitation. Soldiers die without complaint. Anyone who can't accept these requirements should speak now. Nobody speaks. Speaking would constitute insubordination, which carries severe penalties. The sergeant doesn't actually want feedback about military policies. He's establishing dominance and making clear that individual preferences are irrelevant. Military hierarchy operates through intimidation and the threat of violence. Soldiers obey orders because disobedience results in immediate punishment. You kiss May goodbye while trying to memorize her face. She's 22 years old, but looks much older after years of poverty, childbirth, and constant worry. Her hands are rough from manual labor. Her clothes are patched and faded. Her expression combines love, fear, and resignation in proportions that break your heart. You might never see her again. This could be your last moment together. The children cling to your legs as you prepare to leave. They don't fully understand what's happening, but they recognize that this departure is different from your daily trips to work in the fields. You hug each child individually, telling them to be good and help their mother. These words feel inadequate for what might be final conversations with your children. Goodbye speeches work better in stories than in real life. The conscripts march out of the village in a loose formation that will be refined through military training. You look back once to see May holding baby Bao while Ping and Lin stand beside her. They watch from the doorway of your flooded, damaged house that represents the only stability they've ever known. Your family becomes smaller and smaller until distance makes them invisible. You're now walking toward probable death, while the people you love face probable starvation. The march to the military camp takes 3 days. You walk approximately 20 miles per day over rough terrain with minimal food and water. The sergeant sets a pace that challenges everyone but doesn't quite kill anyone. Military training begins immediately with forced marches designed to eliminate recruits who can't handle basic physical demands. Those who collapse during the march are left behind to find their own way home or die alongside the road. 2 men from your village don't complete the march. Wang, your neighbor, develops severe diarrhea from drinking contaminated water and becomes too weak to continue walking. The carpenter's assistant, a young man named Chen, injures his ankle crossing a rocky stream and can't keep up with the group. Both men are abandoned without ceremony or medical attention. The sergeant explains that armies can't afford to carry dead weight. Weak soldiers endanger strong soldiers through their inability to perform essential duties. The military camp occupies several acres of cleared land surrounded by wooden walls and watchtowers. Hundreds of conscripts from various villages mill around training areas, cooking fires, and temporary shelters. The noise is constant. Shouted orders, weapons practice, construction work, and the general chaos of organizing large numbers of people for violent purposes. The camp smells like sweat, smoke, and human waste concentrated in a confined space. You're assigned to a unit of 20 men from different villages. None of you have previous military experience. Your weapons consist of bamboo spears with iron points, leather shields, and short swords that are poorly balanced and difficult to use effectively. Your armor consists of thick cotton padding that provides minimal protection against serious weapons. Professional soldiers wear metal armor and carry superior weapons. Conscripts receive whatever equipment is cheapest to produce in large quantities. Military training lasts 2 weeks. This isn't enough time to develop meaningful combat skills, but it's sufficient to teach basic formation movements and weapon handling. Most training focuses on following orders quickly and without question. Independent thinking is discouraged because battlefield decisions must be made by officers, not individual soldiers. Your job is to point your spear where officers tell you to point it, and march where officers tell you to march. The food in the military camp consists primarily of rice porridge and occasionally small amounts of salted fish. Portions are carefully calculated to provide minimum nutrition necessary for physical labor without wasting resources on comfort or satisfaction. You're hungry constantly but not quite starving. Military logistics prioritize efficiency over soldier welfare. Well-fed soldiers fight better, but adequately fed soldiers fight well enough, while costing less money. Letters from home are forbidden during training. Communication with family members creates emotional distractions that interfere with military discipline. You have no way of knowing whether May and the children are surviving without your income. You don't know if they've found adequate shelter, sufficient food, or protection from the various dangers that threaten women and children in ancient China. This uncertainty adds psychological stress to the physical demands of military training. Your training unit practices spear formations for hours every day. The technique involves standing in tight rows while holding spears at specific angles to create barriers of sharp points facing enemy soldiers. Success requires precise coordination and unwavering discipline. If one soldier breaks formation or drops his spear, he creates gaps that enemy forces can exploit to break through defensive lines. Individual mistakes during combat endanger everyone in the unit. Combat training includes practice with swords, shields, and improvised weapons. You learn to fight with whatever tools are available when primary weapons break or become lost during battle. Soldiers often end up throwing rocks, swinging sticks, or fighting with bare hands when organized combat deteriorates into chaotic violence. Military training prepares you for multiple scenarios of escalating desperation and decreasing options. After 2 weeks of training, your unit receives orders to march toward the rebellion zone. The journey will take approximately 1 month of continuous walking over mountainous terrain during the rainy season. Many soldiers will die from disease, injury, or exhaustion before reaching the battlefield. Those who survive the march will then face enemy forces who have been fighting for months and have developed combat experience that conscripts lack. The night before departure, you lie in your temporary shelter thinking about your family and wondering if you'll ever see them again. Tomorrow you begin a march toward almost certain death, in service of an emperor you've never seen to preserve an empire that has never provided you with any benefits. Your sacrifice will receive no recognition, no compensation, and no gratitude. You'll die anonymously in a remote location for causes you don't understand. But people in ancient China don't get to choose their circumstances. You were born into a system that treats peasants as expendable resources for agricultural production and military service. Your life has value only insofar as it serves imperial interests. Personal desires, family obligations, and individual welfare are irrelevant to government policies. You exist to work, fight, and die when authorities determine that your death serves useful purposes. The march begins at dawn with approximately 2,000 conscripts from various regions of the empire. The column of soldiers stretches for miles along narrow mountain paths that become treacherous during rainfall. Men slip on wet rocks and fall into ravines. Others develop infections from cuts and blisters that become serious medical emergencies without treatment. The march becomes a test of endurance that eliminates weak soldiers before they reach the battlefield. Military discipline during the march is harsh and unforgiving. Soldiers who can't maintain the required pace are beaten and left behind. Those who complain about conditions receive additional punishments designed to discourage others from expressing dissatisfaction. Officers use violence and intimidation to maintain order among men who have little incentive to continue participating in their own probable deaths. You develop severe blisters on your feet during the first week of marching. The crude sandals provided by the military offer minimal protection against rough terrain. Your feet bleed inside your shoes, creating perfect conditions for infection. Walking becomes increasingly painful, but stopping isn't an option. You continue marching while your feet deteriorate because the alternative is abandonment in hostile territory. Food during the march consists of cold rice and occasional dried meat. Water comes from streams and wells that may or may not be contaminated with diseases. Several soldiers develop dysentery and become too weak to continue marching. They're left behind to recover or die according to their individual constitutions. The army doesn't have medical personnel or resources to treat sick soldiers during active campaigns. After 3 weeks of marching, your unit reaches the rebellion zone. The landscape shows evidence of recent battles, burned villages, destroyed crops, and unburied bodies scattered across fields. The air smells like smoke and decay. Vultures circle overhead, waiting for opportunities to feed on human remains. This is what warfare looks like in ancient China. Not glorious combat between heroes, but systematic destruction of everything that supports human life. The rebel forces have fortified themselves in a mountain stronghold that can only be approached through narrow passes, easily defended by small numbers of determined fighters. Imperial strategy involves surrounding the stronghold and waiting for starvation to force surrender. This siege will last months and cost thousands of lives among both rebels and Imperial forces. Most deaths will result from disease and starvation rather than dramatic battle scenes. Your unit is assigned to construct siege equipment and maintain supply lines between the front lines and distant military bases. This work involves carrying heavy materials up steep mountain paths under constant threat of attack from rebel scouts. It's dangerous, exhausting labor that contributes to military objectives while keeping conscripts away from actual combat until they develop useful skills or die from other causes. The siege drags on for months with minimal progress. Rebel forces have adequate food and water supplies within their stronghold. Imperial forces control the surrounding territory, but can't assault the fortified position without massive casualties. Both sides settle into a war of attrition that favors whoever can maintain supplies and morale longer. History suggests this will be the Imperial forces, but at enormous cost in human lives. Disease spreads rapidly through the crowded military camps. Dysentery, typhus, and respiratory infections kill more soldiers than enemy weapons. Medical treatment consists of herbal remedies administered by camp followers who learned healing techniques through trial and error rather than formal training. Most sick soldiers either recover naturally or die quickly. There's no middle ground between health and death in ancient China. You survive the first 6 months of military service through luck, caution, and willingness to perform whatever tasks officers assign without complaint. Many soldiers from your original training unit have died from disease, accident, or enemy action. You've witnessed enough violence and suffering to understand that survival depends more on chance than skill or bravery. Good soldiers die randomly, while incompetent soldiers sometimes survive through pure luck. Winter arrives early in the mountains, bringing snow and freezing temperatures that make siege operations nearly impossible. Soldiers huddle around fires built from whatever combustible materials they can find. Frostbite, hypothermia, and respiratory illnesses increase mortality rates dramatically. The rebellion zone becomes a frozen wasteland where more people die from cold than from weapons. News from home arrives sporadically through letters delivered by civilian merchants. May has found work as a seamstress for a wealthy merchant family. The work pays poorly but provides enough income to prevent starvation. Your children are healthy but have grown significantly during your absence. Ping, now 8 years old, works as an apprentice to the village blacksmith. Lin helps care for Bao while May works. Your family is surviving without you, which provides both relief and sadness. The letter also brings news of deaths in your village. Old Zhang died from pneumonia during the winter. Master Chen passed away from old age and accumulated injuries. Several children died from fever during an epidemic that swept through the region. Your village is slowly emptying as disease, accident, and economic hardship claim residents who lack resources to protect themselves from various dangers. Spring brings renewed military activity as both sides prepare for major battles. The rebel stronghold has been weakened by winter conditions and reduced supplies. Imperial forces have received reinforcements and improved equipment. Your unit receives orders to participate in a direct assault on rebel positions. This will be your first experience with actual combat, assuming you survive long enough to engage enemy soldiers. Combat preparation involves practice with scaling ladders, siege weapons, and close-quarters fighting techniques. Officers explain tactical objectives and assign specific roles to different units. Your job is to carry ladders to the base of enemy walls and hold them steady while other soldiers climb up to attack defenders. This position offers maximum exposure to enemy arrows, spears, and dropped stones. Ladder carriers have the highest casualty rates of any assault troops. The night before the assault, you write a letter to May explaining your love for her and the children. The letter includes instructions for managing family finances and advice for raising the children without their father. You also express hope that the family will find happiness, despite the hardships imposed by your absence and probable death. Writing this letter feels like composing your own obituary. Dawn brings the assault on the rebel stronghold. Thousands of Imperial soldiers advance toward fortified positions while enemy archers shoot arrows into the approaching mass of humanity. Men fall around you, some killed instantly, and others wounded severely enough to remove them from further combat. The noise is overwhelming. Screaming soldiers, clanging weapons, shouted orders, and the constant whistle of arrows flying overhead. You reach the base of the enemy wall while carrying a heavy wooden ladder with 3 other soldiers. Enemy defenders drop rocks and pour boiling oil on attacking troops below. The soldier next to you takes an arrow through his chest and collapses, still holding his end of the ladder. You continue holding your position while other soldiers attempt to climb up and engage defenders in hand-to-hand combat. An enemy spear thrust catches you in the shoulder, creating a deep wound that bleeds heavily but doesn't kill you immediately. Pain shoots through your arm and down your side. You drop your end of the ladder and stumble backward, trying to avoid further injury while remaining conscious. Blood soaks through your cotton armor and runs down your arm. You need medical attention but won't receive any until the battle ends. The assault continues for hours, with neither side gaining decisive advantage. Imperial forces capture sections of the wall before being driven back by counterattacks. Rebel forces maintain their positions but suffer heavy casualties from sustained assaults. Both sides are exhausted, bloodied, and running low on arrows and other projectiles. The battle becomes a contest of endurance rather than tactical skill. Eventually, rebel resistance collapses as their ammunition and energy reserves become depleted. Imperial forces capture the stronghold after suffering massive casualties. Victory requires hours of additional fighting to eliminate remaining pockets of resistance and secure key positions. By the time combat ends, thousands of soldiers from both sides lie dead or dying on the battlefield. You survive the assault with a wounded shoulder and various minor injuries. Many soldiers in your unit are dead or missing. The victory celebration is subdued because everyone understands that winning this battle just means marching to the next battle in a different location. Military campaigns in ancient China consist of series of violent encounters that continue until one side completely destroys the other. Victory in individual battles doesn't end wars. Recovery from your shoulder wound takes several weeks, during which you perform light duties around the military camp. The wound becomes infected, despite treatment with herbal remedies and bandages made from cloth scraps. Infection causes fever, delirium, and weakness that nearly kills you before your immune system fights off whatever bacteria invaded the wound. Surviving combat injuries in ancient China requires strong constitution and good luck. After 8 months of military service, your unit receives orders to march toward another province where different rebels are causing different problems for the imperial government. The cycle of warfare continues indefinitely, as long as conditions exist that motivate people to risk their lives fighting against government forces. Rebellions don't end when individual rebel groups are defeated. They end when underlying causes of rebellion are addressed through political reforms that rarely happen. The second campaign involves similar marching, siege operations, and assault tactics in a different mountainous region against enemies who employ similar defensive strategies. Military operations become routine repetitions of violence, suffering, and death that achieve temporary victories at enormous human cost. You participate in this system because desertion means execution and survival requires following orders, regardless of personal feelings about military objectives. During the second winter of your military service, news arrives that the emperor has died and been succeeded by his son. Imperial succession often involves political instability, as various factions compete for influence over the new ruler. Some rebellions end when new emperors implement policy changes that address grievances of rebel groups. Other rebellions intensify as new emperors prove more oppressive than their predecessors. You've now been away from your family for nearly 2 years. May's letters arrive less frequently and contain increasingly concerning news about economic conditions in your village. Several families have abandoned their homes and migrated to cities looking for work. Others have sold themselves into indentured servitude to wealthy landowners. Your village is slowly disintegrating as economic pressures exceed people's ability to maintain traditional ways of life. Your children are growing up without their father. Ping is now 10 years old and works full-time as a blacksmith's apprentice. Lin, at 7, helps care for household responsibilities while Mei works as a seamstress. Bao is 5 and beginning to contribute to family survival through simple tasks like collecting firewood and tending small animals. They're developing skills and relationships that don't include you. Military life has changed you in ways that will make returning to civilian life difficult. You've seen men die violently and have killed enemy soldiers yourself. You've learned to follow orders without question and to suppress emotional responses to traumatic experiences. You've adapted to military discipline, group living, and constant preparation for violence. These adaptations will create problems when you try to resume family relationships and community responsibilities. After 2.5 years of military service, Imperial forces achieve sufficient success in suppressing rebellions that conscripted soldiers are allowed to return home. Your unit receives discharge papers and minimal compensation for military service. The payment amounts to approximately 6 months of a farmer's wages, which doesn't compensate for 30 months of lost civilian income or the physical and psychological trauma of military service. The journey home takes 3 weeks of walking over familiar routes that now seem strange after years of absence. Your body has adapted to military life and feels uncomfortable with civilian clothes and civilian routines. You've lost weight, gained scars, and developed a permanent limp from poorly healed injuries. Military service has aged you far more than the actual passage of time. You arrive in your village to find significant changes. Several houses stand empty after families migrated or died. New families have moved into abandoned properties. The economy has shifted toward different crops and crafts as people adapted to changing market conditions. Your village has continued evolving while you were away, and your place in the community is no longer clearly defined. May greets you with mixture of joy and uncertainty. 2.5 years of separation have changed both of you. She's learned to manage family responsibilities independently and has developed relationships and routines that don't include you. You've become accustomed to military hierarchy and group decision-making rather than family consultation and compromise. Rebuilding your marriage will require effort and patience from both partners. Your children treat you with polite respect rather than familiar affection. They remember you as their father, but don't have recent shared experiences to support close emotional connections. Ping has grown into a serious young man who contributes significantly to family income. Lin has become responsible for many household tasks. Bao barely remembers you at all and treats you like a friendly stranger who happens to live in his house. Returning to agricultural work proves difficult after years of military service. Your body has adapted to different types of physical labor and struggles with the repetitive motions required for farming. Your shoulder injury makes some farm tasks impossible. Most importantly, your mental focus has been trained for military objectives rather than agricultural planning. You find it hard to concentrate on long-term crop management when your military experience emphasized immediate tactical decisions. The economic situation in your village has deteriorated during your absence. Tax obligations have increased while crop yields have decreased due to poor weather and soil exhaustion. Many families face debt burdens that will require years to resolve. Your family has accumulated debts during your military service that will consume most of your income for the foreseeable future. Military service has made your economic situation worse rather than better. Master Wang, the magistrate's representative, has been replaced by a younger man with different policies and priorities. The new official places greater emphasis on tax collection and less emphasis on community welfare. He views returning soldiers as potential troublemakers who need close supervision rather than valuable community members who deserve support. Your military service doesn't earn you respect or consideration from local authorities. You struggle to readjust to civilian life while dealing with memories of violence and trauma from military service. Sleep is disrupted by nightmares about battle scenes and dead comrades. Loud noises trigger anxiety responses developed during months of combat operations. Social interactions feel awkward because civilian concerns seem trivial compared to life and death decisions you faced as a soldier. Post-traumatic stress doesn't have a name in ancient China, but it has the same symptoms. Your relationship with May slowly improves as you both work to rebuild emotional intimacy and practical cooperation. She shares stories about her experiences during your absence, while you gradually reveal selected details about military life. Full disclosure would traumatize her unnecessarily, but complete silence creates barriers to emotional connection. Finding the right balance between honesty and protection requires careful navigation. The children warm up to you gradually as you demonstrate consistent presence and interest in their activities. Ping appreciates advice about metalworking techniques that transfer from military experience with weapons maintenance. Lin enjoys hearing edited stories about distant places you visited during military campaigns. Bao slowly accepts you as a permanent household member rather than a temporary visitor. Rebuilding family relationships requires patience and consistent effort over many months. After 6 months of civilian life, you've established new routines that incorporate your changed circumstances and capabilities. Your injured shoulder limits some types of work, but doesn't prevent you from contributing to family survival. Your military experience provides useful skills for village security and conflict resolution. Your broader perspective from traveling to distant provinces helps with community planning and decision-making. You've found ways to make your military service beneficial rather than purely destructive. The village faces new challenges as imperial policies change under the new emperor. Tax assessments have increased significantly. Military recruitment continues for ongoing campaigns in distant provinces. Trade restrictions limit access to manufactured goods and raw materials needed for local crafts. Economic pressures that drove previous rebellions continue operating, suggesting that future uprisings are inevitable. Your neighbor's son, Young Wei, reaches conscription age, just as you're settling back into civilian life. He's 18 years old and has never traveled beyond the next village. His military service will follow the same pattern you experienced: inadequate training, dangerous marching, disease, combat, and probable death far from home. The cycle of military conscription continues, consuming young men regardless of individual circumstances or family needs. "What should I expect?" Wei asks you privately. His parents have sent him to seek advice from someone with actual military experience. Most adults in the village have opinions about military service, but you're one of the few people who has survived combat and returned home. Your advice could potentially save his life, or at least help him avoid preventable mistakes. You want to tell Wei the truth about military service, that most conscripts die from disease rather than enemy action, that officers treat soldiers as expendable resources, that combat is chaotic and terrifying rather than heroic and glorious, that survival depends more on luck than skill or bravery. But complete honesty might demoralize him before he even begins military training. Demoralized soldiers make mistakes that endanger themselves and others. Follow orders quickly and exactly, you tell Wei. Don't volunteer for dangerous assignments. Stay close to experienced soldiers who can teach you survival techniques. Write letters home regularly because you might not have many opportunities to communicate with your family. This advice balances honesty with practical guidance. Wei needs realistic expectations about military life without becoming paralyzed by fear. He also needs specific strategies for increasing his survival chances. Most importantly, he needs to understand that military service is a temporary ordeal, that some people survive if they make smart decisions and avoid unnecessary risks. Wei nods solemnly and asks about combat techniques. You demonstrate basic spear formations and sword-fighting stances that proved useful during your military service. Physical skills matter less than mental preparation, but Wei feels more confident when he has concrete abilities to practice. Confidence helps soldiers perform effectively under pressure, even when their actual skills are limited. The conversation with Wei reminds you how much your perspective has changed since returning from military service. You now understand government policies, economic systems, and social hierarchies that were invisible or confusing before your military experience. Traveling to distant provinces and interacting with people from different regions provided education that peasants rarely receive. Knowledge doesn't automatically improve your circumstances, but it helps you understand why your circumstances are difficult to change. Your family's economic situation stabilizes gradually as you contribute income from farming and occasional construction work in the village. Military experience with siege equipment proves useful for building projects that require engineering knowledge. Your injured shoulder prevents heavy lifting, but you can supervise projects and train younger workers in specialized techniques. Finding ways to monetize military skills helps justify the personal costs of military service. May's work as a seamstress provides steady income that supplements agricultural earnings. She has developed relationships with wealthy families who appreciate her skill with fabric repair and garment construction. Her reputation for reliable work creates opportunities for additional projects during busy seasons. Women's economic contributions are often undervalued in ancient China, but your family's survival depends significantly on May's craftsmanship and business relationships. Your children continue growing and taking on additional responsibilities within the family and community. Ping's apprenticeship with the blacksmith leads to opportunities for independent metalwork projects. Lin helps other families with childcare and household tasks while learning domestic skills from experienced women. Bao tends the family's small livestock and helps with agricultural work appropriate for his age and size. Everyone contributes according to their capabilities. The village economy adjusts to ongoing challenges through increased cooperation and resource sharing. Families pool labor for major projects like well maintenance and road repair. Craftspeople share tools and materials to reduce individual expenses. Community leaders organize group purchasing of expensive items like plow animals and grinding stones. Collective action helps small communities survive economic pressures that would overwhelm individual families. Disease remains a constant threat that kills community members regularly. A fever epidemic during your second-year home claims several elderly residents and 2 young children. Your family avoids serious illness through careful attention to hygiene and nutrition, but luck plays a larger role than precaution in determining who survives disease outbreaks. Medical care remains limited to herbal remedies and hope. Your relationship with village authorities evolves as you demonstrate reliability and competence in community affairs. Military experience provides credibility when discussing security issues and conflict resolution. Local officials recognize that veterans understand government policies and imperial authority in ways that civilians don't. Your advice is sought when villagers need to navigate bureaucratic procedures or legal complications. Master Chen's replacement as village elder, a man named Master Wu, consults you about tax negotiations with the magistrate's office. Imperial tax policies have become increasingly complex and burdensome. Villagers need advocates who understand government bureaucracy and can present community concerns effectively. Your military service, despite its hardships, has given you knowledge that benefits your entire community. The magistrate wants to increase grain taxes by 30%. Master Wu explains during a community meeting. He claims imperial authorities need additional resources for military campaigns in the western provinces. Military campaigns in distant provinces represent ongoing imperial expansion that requires constant infusions of money, materials, and soldiers from established territories. Imperial growth depends on extracting resources from conquered regions to fund further conquests. This system works until expansion reaches geographic or economic limits that make additional growth impossible. Ancient China hasn't reached those limits yet, so resource extraction continues indefinitely. You help draft a formal petition requesting tax reduction based on recent crop failures and population losses from disease and military conscription. The petition includes detailed calculations, showing how increased taxes would force families into debt, slavery, or starvation. Government officials prefer mathematical arguments to emotional appeals because numbers seem objective and unemotional. Whether officials actually care about mathematics or emotions is questionable, but formal petitions follow established procedures. The petition process requires multiple trips to the county seat for meetings with various bureaucrats who have authority over different aspects of tax policy. Each meeting involves long waits, formal ceremonies, and careful attention to protocol that demonstrates proper respect for imperial authority. Bureaucratic procedures serve multiple functions. They delay decisions that officials prefer to avoid. They demonstrate government power over civilian populations, and they exhaust petitioners who might otherwise pursue their requests more aggressively. Your military background helps navigate bureaucratic interactions because you understand hierarchical authority structures and formal communication protocols. Civilian petitioners often make mistakes that offend officials and undermine their requests. Military training in following orders and showing respect for superiors translates directly to civilian dealings with government bureaucracy. Your village benefits from having a representative who understands how power works in ancient China. After 6 months of bureaucratic negotiations, the village receives a tax reduction of 15% rather than the requested 30% increase avoidance. This outcome represents partial success that prevents immediate economic catastrophe, while still imposing additional burdens on struggling families. Government officials demonstrate flexibility while maintaining their authority to extract resources from civilian populations. Everyone compromises on terms that favor those with more power. Your third child, another son, is born during your 4th year home from military service. The pregnancy and delivery proceed normally, which represents remarkable good fortune in ancient China. Mei has now successfully delivered 4 children and lost only 1 to disease. Her survival rate exceeds average expectations for women in her circumstances. The new baby appears healthy and develops normally during his first months of life. Naming the baby requires consideration of family traditions, religious beliefs, and practical concerns about attracting unwanted attention from authorities or supernatural forces. Many families choose humble names that don't suggest aspirations for wealth or power that might provoke jealousy or suspicion. Your new son receives the name Jian, which means healthy, and represents your primary hope for his future rather than ambitions for extraordinary achievements. The additional family member strains household resources that were already stretched thin. Another mouth to feed means less food for everyone else. Another person to house means more crowded sleeping arrangements. Another potential worker means long-term benefits. But babies require years of investment before they contribute to family survival. Having children in ancient China represents optimism about the future, despite overwhelming evidence that the future will resemble the difficult present. Your eldest son, Ping, completes his apprenticeship and becomes a junior blacksmith with his own small forge and basic tools. His transition to independent craftsman provides additional income for your extended family while establishing his own economic foundation. Successful apprenticeships create opportunities for social mobility that farming rarely provides. Skilled craftspeople can earn more money and have more control over their working conditions than agricultural laborers. Lin, now 9 years old, shows aptitude for textile work that could lead to apprenticeship opportunities with master weavers in larger towns. Her fine motor skills and attention to detail make her valuable for intricate fabric work that commands higher prices than basic cloth production. Developing marketable skills provides women with more economic options than subsistence farming or domestic service. Specialized crafts offer paths to relative prosperity within the constraints of ancient Chinese society. Your family's gradual economic improvement reflects successful adaptation to post-military circumstances and effective utilization of available opportunities. You've learned to work within existing systems rather than fighting against them. Military service, despite its hardships and trauma, provided knowledge and experience that benefit your family and community. Your survival and relative prosperity demonstrate that individuals can sometimes overcome systemic disadvantages through persistence, skill, and luck. The village continues facing challenges from disease, weather, economic exploitation, and government policies that prioritize imperial interests over local welfare. But community cooperation and individual adaptation help people survive conditions that seem unsurvivable. Families support each other through crises, neighbors share resources during emergencies, local leaders advocate for community interests within the constraints of imperial authority. Social networks provide resilience that individual families lack. Your military service and its aftermath illustrate broader patterns of life in ancient China. Government policies treat individuals as resources to be exploited for imperial purposes. Economic systems extract wealth from producers to benefit landowners and officials. Social hierarchies limit opportunities for advancement while maintaining stability through predictable role assignments. But people find ways to survive, adapt, and occasionally thrive within these constraints. Individual resilience combines with community cooperation to create survival strategies that work despite systemic oppression. Families develop multiple income sources to reduce dependency on single economic activities. Communities create mutual aid networks that help members survive temporary crises. Individuals acquire skills and knowledge that provide advantages in navigating bureaucratic and economic challenges. These adaptations don't eliminate systemic problems, but they help people live meaningful lives within imperfect circumstances. Your story represents millions of similar stories from ancient China and other historical periods when most people lived in conditions that modern standards would consider intolerable. Poverty, disease, violence, and political oppression were normal rather than exceptional experiences. People developed psychological and social mechanisms for coping with constant hardship because the alternative was despair and death. Human adaptability extends far beyond what comfortable modern life requires or demonstrates. The children growing up in your household will face similar challenges to those you've encountered, but they'll bring different skills and perspectives to their survival efforts. Your military experience provides knowledge about government operations and distant regions. May's craftsmanship creates opportunities for women's economic participation. Ping's metalworking skills offer social mobility potential. Lin's textile abilities provide specialized income sources. Each generation builds on previous adaptations while developing new responses to evolving challenges. Your youngest son, Jian, will grow up in a world shaped by the same systemic forces that made your own life difficult, but he'll also benefit from family knowledge and community relationships that provide advantages your generation didn't have. Accumulated wisdom, established social networks, and developed skills create platforms for incremental improvement across generations. Progress in ancient China happens slowly and unevenly, but it happens. The broader imperial system that governs your life will eventually change through internal evolution, external pressure, or complete collapse. Ancient Chinese dynasties follow predictable cycles of expansion, consolidation, decline, and replacement. Your individual life occurs within one phase of this cycle, but your descendants will experience different phases with different opportunities and challenges. Historical change happens on timescales longer than individual lifespans, but it happens continuously. Economic development, technological innovation, and social evolution gradually improve living conditions for ordinary people despite periodic setbacks from wars, famines, and political upheavals. The agricultural techniques, craft skills, and social institutions of your generation will be refined and improved by future generations. Your struggles contribute to gradual progress that you won't live to see, but that will benefit people who share your genetic heritage and cultural traditions. Your military service, traumatic as it was, contributes to imperial stability that enables economic development and technological progress. Suppressing rebellions prevents chaos that would disrupt agriculture, trade, and craft production. Maintaining centralized authority facilitates infrastructure development, legal institutions, and cultural achievements that benefit future generations. Individual sacrifices serve collective purposes even when those purposes aren't apparent to the people making sacrifices. The village where you've rebuilt your life represents thousands of similar communities throughout the empire where ordinary people work, raise families, and maintain cultural traditions despite extraordinary challenges. These communities preserve knowledge, skills, and social practices that will be transmitted to future generations. Local stability enables broader social development even when individual lives involve significant hardship and suffering. Your story ends not with dramatic resolution or clear victory, but with ongoing adaptation to circumstances that remain difficult but manageable. This is how most human lives actually unfold, rather than following narrative patterns of stories designed for entertainment. Real survival involves persistent effort to address immediate challenges while building foundations for long-term security. Success means continuing to exist and maintaining relationships that provide meaning and support. Ancient China tested human endurance and adaptability in ways that modern life rarely requires. People survived by developing resilience, maintaining hope, and supporting each other through collective action. Your family's experience demonstrates that individuals can overcome seemingly impossible circumstances through persistence, skill, and mutual aid. These lessons remain relevant because human nature and social challenges retain consistent elements across historical periods. Modern life provides advantages that ancient Chinese peasants couldn't imagine: medical care that prevents most early deaths, economic opportunities that enable social mobility, educational systems that develop individual potential, and political institutions that provide some protection from arbitrary government power. These advantages represent accumulated progress from millions of individual struggles like your own. Every generation builds on previous achievements while addressing new challenges. But modern comfort shouldn't obscure the reality that most human existence throughout history involved hardships that tested every aspect of human capability. Your story represents normal human experience rather than exceptional circumstances. People have always faced disease, poverty, violence, and uncertainty while working to protect their families and communities. The specific challenges change, but the fundamental human experience of struggling against difficult circumstances remains constant. Your legacy isn't heroic achievement or dramatic transformation of social conditions. Your legacy is successful adaptation to challenging circumstances, effective transmission of survival skills to your children, and contribution to community resilience that enables collective survival. These ordinary accomplishments represent extraordinary human achievements when viewed against the backdrop of forces that constantly threaten individual and community survival. The cycles of agricultural work that structure your daily life will continue for thousands of years after your death. The village where you live will persist through multiple dynasties and social transformations. The family relationships you've maintained and rebuilt will extend through generations of descendants who will face different challenges with tools and knowledge derived partly from your experiences. Your individual life contributes to continuities that transcend any single lifetime. Ancient China shaped human civilization in ways that continue influencing modern life. The agricultural techniques, craft skills, bureaucratic institutions, philosophical traditions, and cultural practices developed during periods like your own created foundations for subsequent technological and social development. Your participation in this historical process, however small and involuntary, connects your individual experience to broader human achievements. This is why history matters beyond academic curiosity or entertainment value. Understanding how people like you survived impossible circumstances provides perspective on modern challenges and opportunities. Your story demonstrates human resilience while highlighting the importance of social institutions, economic systems, and political arrangements that either support or undermine individual welfare. Learning from the past helps create better futures. Your life in ancient China wouldn't appeal to anyone who has experienced modern alternatives. The constant physical discomfort, economic insecurity, medical vulnerability, and political powerlessness would seem unbearable to people accustomed to contemporary conveniences and protections. But your life also demonstrates human capabilities that modern comfort sometimes obscures: the ability to endure hardship, adapt to changing circumstances, maintain relationships under stress, and find meaning in daily survival activities. Modern people facing personal or social challenges can learn from your example that human beings can survive and even thrive under conditions far worse than anything contemporary life typically demands. This knowledge doesn't minimize modern problems or suggest that historical hardships were acceptable. It does provide perspective on human resilience and the importance of supporting social systems that prevent unnecessary suffering while promoting individual and community flourishing. Your story ends where it began, with ordinary people doing extraordinary things to survive in a world that offers limited opportunities and constant challenges. You wake up each day, care for your family, contribute to your community, and find reasons to continue existing despite overwhelming evidence that existence is difficult and uncertain. This pattern of daily resilience represents the foundation of all human civilization and progress. The agricultural work continues, the seasons change. Children grow up and have children of their own. Communities adapt to new challenges while maintaining cultural continuities. Empires rise and fall. Technologies develop, social institutions evolve, but individual people continue facing the fundamental challenge of creating meaningful lives within whatever circumstances they inherit. Your story is everyone's story, separated only by differences in time, place, and specific details. And that's why you wouldn't last a day in ancient China. Not because you lack courage, intelligence, or determination, but because surviving in ancient China required skills, knowledge, and psychological adaptations that take years to develop and can only be acquired through direct experience of hardship that modern life mercifully spares most people from enduring. Your story honors both the remarkable resilience of people who lived through impossible circumstances and the extraordinary progress that has made such circumstances unnecessary for many contemporary people. The next time you complain about minor inconveniences like slow internet or lukewarm coffee, remember that billions of people throughout history would have considered your worst day a miraculous improvement over their best day. This perspective doesn't solve modern problems, but it does provide context for appreciating both how far humanity has progressed and how much work remains to ensure that progress benefits everyone, rather than just those fortunate enough to be born into comfortable circumstances. Your ancestors survived ancient China so that you could have options they never imagined. Honor their sacrifice by using those options wisely.